everybody, and welcome back to our weekly Rise Up Animal Road video. Today, we are talking about episode 7, First Student X Pain in the Butt, which is an apt title. But before we get into my thoughts on this week's episode, I do want to give a big thank you to @spicy_mildsauce for sharing last week's video over on Twitter. And if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Rise Up video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Okay, so this week's episode of Rise Up it's interesting, right? I really consider this one to be the most mixed bag episode of the series thus far. It's mostly good, but there's stuff about this week's episode that really kind of annoyed me. But before we get into the stuff that annoyed me, let's talk about something that I really liked, namely Celes. I want to call her Celeste, but it's Celes. She is Genzo's quote-unquote new student. She's the new student from the title, and the pain in the butt would be Genzo, because he got on my friggin' nerves in this week's episode. But again, it's the point, but it's meant to be funny, and it never made me laugh. He is just really annoying in this week's episode. Now, the whole thing is, at first he doesn't want to train Celeste, because he thinks that she's just some hunter, and he actually gives her like the Ric Flair figure 8 submission hold, which I got to admit I was like, oh look, there's another wrestling move that I know. But so that was fun, and it was funny, and her interaction with Genzo is cute through most of the episode on her end. On Genzo's end, it's really creepy, because you see, Celes is not your average hunter. She is, in fact, a lizard man hunter. She's not human, and the only noticeable lizard man trait that she holds is that her back and stomach are scaly. Now, that, nothing against Celes, that's totally fine. The issue comes into play when you remember that Genzo is a big creepy tool when it comes to anything remotely animalistic, and he is not interested in Celes until he finds out that she's a lizard man or woman, but in this case they say lizard man just as like a catch-all term, so I'm going to be using the phrase lizard man. And Genzo is like all about her after that, and I was like, man, like, she's cool from the jump. Like, why you gotta... whatever, like, and that's not my issue with Genzo in this week's episode. My issue is that he takes the typical Genzo's like a furry type, or a scaly in this case, joke way too far. Like, this is like, from now on I'm gonna point to episode 7 as like, this is the limit to how much of Genzo's shenanigans I can take, because for the most part, Genzo in this show is portrayed to be really, really funny, and his love for animals never gets overbearing. It's a lot, but it's never overbearing, whereas in this episode, it actually does push it to a point where I actually got annoyed. So I do think that this is the fine line. If we had like the whole brawl with the guild, right, because like Genzo freaks out at one point in the episode, towards like the end of the middle half of the episode, Genzo like loses his mind, because he finds out that the reason why Celeste came to train with him is because she felt like she was being mistreated by the guild. And he took that as like that they were abusing her, like physically, and he lost his shit, rightfully so, because he thought that they were like, being abusive. So he went to go kick the ever-living hell out of them, but then once it's resolved, he is still like, no, too bad. And at first I was like, oh, that's kind of funny, but then it happens 2 more times. And it's like, okay, like, it was funny once, and then it was like, it got a light scoff out of me the second time, and then the third time I was really annoyed. And he kind of holds this mentality through most of the episode. And I don't like, you guys, okay, listen. If there's one thing that I don't like making videos about, or there's one thing I don't like about making videos, rather, it's that I don't like to be negative. It is not fun for me, because I get no joy out of it, and I'm not pleasing anybody, because nobody wants a negative opinion on a show that we're all watching together. You don't want to hear the negative, and I don't want to share my negative thoughts, but it is what I was thinking during the episode. And I don't like being negative, especially towards my boy Genzo, because typically I really love Genzo. He's easily one of my best boys, honestly, even though he annoyed me in this week's episode, and even though the furry thing can be like a lot, and nothing against furries, it's just Genzo's specific tendencies are a lot, he's still what I would consider a husbando from the season. I still really like Genzo, and I still immensely care for my husbando, but this week's episode, he really did bug me. And I guess it's just the fact, like I said, that they stretch this whole Celes joke way too far, this overprotective thing way too far, and it got annoying because I just wanted to see Celes make up with the guild, because they actually managed, and this is where we get into the good of the episode, they actually managed to make me care a lot about this character who's only introduced now. She's only introduced in this episode, and for all I know, this might be her only episode. I hope we see her again, because they're teasing like a new arc coming up. So hopefully we see her again. I don't know if it's going to be a whole arc or just next episode, but hopefully we see Celes again there, because honestly, she stole this week's episode. She is absolutely fantastic. Celes just absolutely blends right into Genzo's group without any real hiccups. Like, I never really noticed at any point that she was like not quite gelling with them. Like, she immediately enters and immediately gels with everybody. Kudos to the Seiyu, by the way, who just easily blends into the zany comedic style of Genzo's group. Just totally blends in perfectly. She was fantastic on the Seiyu front, fantastic on the character design front. Like, Celes is really pretty, but also you can tell she's a hunter, you can tell she's badass. It never goes over the top with like, oh, look how, they even do like a joking like sexy pose at one point, and you could tell that she's like, I am hot, but I'm not, like, this isn't my main mode. Like, I'm mostly an ass kicker. She kind of reminds me of like Charlotte or Becky Lynch, where it's like, yeah, they're pretty, but they're also an ass kicker. You know what I mean? Like, their main mode isn't look how hot I am, it's I will mess you up. And that's what I got from Celes, the idea that she's this sort of badass hunter, but at the same time, I like that she is still human, quote unquote, enough, or I guess like demi-human enough, to be hurt when her fellow hunters treat her like trash, because that's what eventually starts this whole episode, is that she feels underappreciated in the guild because, as we find, and this was admittedly really funny, she feels underappreciated because the guild's been having a hard time lately. And the reason they've been having a hard time lately is because every time they try to go out and fight, the demonic beasts, for some reason, this dude appears, this like weird beastman type of character, and he shows up, and he shows up wearing like this weird cape we've never seen before, and this like, and he has like a lion's mane or like a tiger's face, and immediately our whole group is like, oh my god, and it's Genzo, and you're like, oh, and even Genzo's like, uh-oh, like he doesn't say that it's him, but immediately drops the whole like, you have to apologize to her. And that was admittedly really funny. This is not only really funny, but it also neatly ties the whole episode up in a bow and properly brings Celes into the group, hopefully going forward, because her whole backstory inadvertently was caused by Genzo trying to get even more demonic beasts to join the whole pet shop thing. And it's, I don't know, I found her character really entertaining. However, to get to another negative that I had with the episode, her character also is the catalyst for the worst fight scene in the show. And I mean that both for Genzo versus the guild and for Celes versus the guild, because both are fun. Like, they're certainly fun, but animation-wise, they are the weakest. I shouldn't say the worst, because they're not bad. They're not bad fight scenes, but they're like that Dr. Stone type of fight scene where it's like mostly you just see like the big action shots and the screen kind of shakes instead of actually seeing some fluid motion like we've actually come to expect from the show. Now, mind you, we haven't seen like a quality and like the Sakuga that we had expected from the first couple of episodes. We haven't seen that in a little bit, and it's most noticeable here since we have 2 fight scenes that are just kind of animated decently, like that sort of Dr. Stone style, which is fine in Dr. Stone, but here I know that you can do better, so when I see you doing passable, it's just kind of upsetting. And again, that's a very personal gripe, but it is something that I noticed with the episode and I felt worth bringing up, because the fight scene between Celes and the one guild member with the red hair, who really needs a name, by the way, because I like this character design and I like his character thus far, he needs a name. But Celes versus this dude is actually really fun, and the whole suplex finisher was actually a nice way to tie in the whole training arc from the beginning of the episode. But yeah, animation-wise, I just know that the show can do better. I'm not mad with the animation in this week's episode. I'm not. I'm just disappointed. No, but seriously, I'm not trying to give the animation team a hard time. I've seen you guys at your best, and this just isn't your best. And I will call you out on it when I feel you deserve it, but I'll also give you praise anytime that I see you guys doing great, and I know that you can do great, so that's just why I'm calling it out. The big saving grace for this week's episode is that the seiyus kill it like always, and the humor is absolutely top-notch as ever. I still think this is my favorite, like, out-and-out comedy of the season. It's just really friggin' funny. And seeing Genzo be sort of a jerk for most of the episode was annoying, admittedly, but it did eventually tie into a pretty good punchline towards the end of the episode. And actually, we get a nice little tease for what is coming up next week, that being that Genzo is actually going to become a paid wrestler again. He's going to be like being part of a tournament, and he's going to be paid to do so. So essentially, he is a wrestler once again in another world. So we've actually come full circle on that fact. And I expect that we'll see Mao at this tournament. So I'm looking forward to seeing my boy again, looking forward to seeing Mao versus Genzo, if that's actually what happens. And I hope we see more of Celes. Again, I really found that character to be really fun, and I hope that they actually keep her around instead of just having it be a one-off. If it's a one-off, fine. I did grow really, I was really impressed with how much they managed to get me to care about her in one episode. So if it's a one and done, fine, but I do hope we get to see this character again. On that note, everybody, I'm gonna give this week's episode a rating of C. I thought this was a decent C tier episode. It's okay, but you know that the show can do better, so I feel like a C is appropriate. And on that note, everybody, that's gonna wrap up today's video, but before we take off, I wanna give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier: Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, Ginkotaku, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Omner Garamond, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Tristan, Verdon, and Westbourne Eastbred. A huge thank you to those of you who support the channel over on Patreon, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. Thanks once again for checking out today's video, everybody. If you enjoyed it, then you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't gonna tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated. And if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.